Whispers on the Wind, the Lost Code of the Hobo Trails. The year was 1934, and the West was no longer a land of cowboys, but of ghosts. They were ghosts of the Dust Bowl, men with hollowed-out eyes and calloused hands, riding the steel veins of America, not for adventure, but for survival. They were called hobos, and my father, Silas, had become one of them. He hadn't vanished in a gunfight or a cattle stampede. He'd simply been erased by poverty, swallowed by the rails 5 years ago. All he left behind was a small, worn leather journal, which I found tucked away in the attic of our quiet Kansas home. I was 18, and the world I knew was confined to dusty farm roads and the drone of the wind. That journal was a key to a world I couldn't imagine. Its pages weren't filled with words, but with a strange, secret geometry. A circle with 2 arrows pointing outwards, a simple drawing of a cat, a cross with a small circle in its top corner. To me, they were nonsense. To my father, they had been the language of life and death. The final entry was a series of symbols, followed by a hastily scrawled name, Blackjack Callahan. Beneath it, a crudely drawn bridge over a canyon. That was the last page. For 5 years, I'd held on to the hope he was alive. Now, holding the journal, a different kind of hope took root, the hope of understanding. I packed a small bag with bread, a canteen of water, and the journal. Kissing my sleeping mother's forehead, I walked out into the pre-dawn chill and headed for the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the rail yard. My first night on the rails was a brutal education. Cold seeped into my bones. The rocking of the boxcar was a constant, jarring motion, and the other men who shared the car were shadows with suspicious eyes. I was an outsider, a greenhorn, and it showed. In the rail yard of a small Colorado town, I made my first mistake. I saw a symbol from my father's journal carved into a water tower post, a simple circle. The journal said it meant nothing to be gained here. Ignoring it, I approached a nearby house, hoping for a handout. The door was opened by a grim-faced man holding a shotgun. "Get off my property, rail rat, before I fill you with buckshot." I stumbled back, my heart hammering. The code wasn't a game, it was a warning. Later that day, huddled by a small fire, I saw another symbol on a fence post, a small, simple cross. The way to go. It pointed down a dirt path, away from the hostile town. I followed it, my father's journal feeling less like a memento and more like a map to a world hidden in plain sight.
For weeks, I was a ghost among ghosts, learning to read the whispers left on fence posts, bridges, and barn doors. The symbols became my vocabulary. A drawing of a cat meant a kind lady lives here, a promise of a meal given without judgment. A triangle with hands inside meant the owner had a gun. A grid pattern was a clear warning, jail. I learned to navigate this silent conversation, to find the hidden pockets of humanity and avoid the open traps of hostility. I was surviving, but I wasn't getting any closer to understanding what happened to my father. The trail was cold, a collection of disconnected warnings and offers of charity. I was learning the language, but I didn't know the story it was trying to tell. The change came in a hobo jungle, a makeshift camp hidden in a grove of cottonwood trees by a river in Utah. Here men shared stories, coffee boiled in tin cans, and news from up and down the line. It was here I met a man who called himself Boxcar Bill. He was old, with a face like a wrinkled road map and eyes that had seen every mile of track in the country. He saw me studying my father's journal by the firelight. "That's an old hands book," he said. his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "Not many keep a record like that anymore. Too dangerous." I showed him the final page. When he saw the name Blackjack Callahan, a shadow passed over his face. The friendly campfire suddenly felt cold. "Callahan ain't no sheriff," Bill whispered, looking around as if the trees were listening. "He's a railroad bull, the worst kind, works for the Union Pacific, calls himself a security agent, but he's more like a wolf guarding the henhouse. He don't just throw men off the trains, he collects them." I asked what he meant. "Some men who run into Callahan, they just disappear. Good men, strong men. They're seen near his territory in Wyoming, and then gone. The wind don't even whisper their names no more." He pointed to the symbol of the bridge in my father's journal. "That's the Devil's Backbone Bridge, just outside of Rattlesnake Canyon. That's Callahan's hunting ground. Your pa was writing a warning, kid. He wasn't just passing through. He saw something he wasn't supposed to." For the first time, the symbols in the journal shifted in meaning. They weren't just about survival anymore. They were clues, and they were leading me straight into a wolf's den. Boxcar Bill gave me one last piece of advice, his eyes deadly serious. "The code can keep you alive, kid, but it can also lead you to the same place it led your pa. You turn back now, or you be ready to write your own last page."
The journey north into Wyoming was different. A palpable sense of dread seemed to hang in the air, a tension that even the vast, open skies couldn't dissipate. The Hobo code changed here. The symbols became more urgent, more fearful. The friendly cat symbol was nowhere to be seen. In its place were new, more sinister carvings. 2 interlocking circles, handcuffs, a horizontal line with a circle beneath it, "Man with a gun is not to be trusted." And one symbol I began to see with chilling frequency, one not even in my father's journal, a crude drawing of a flame or a burning coal. The hobos I met spoke the name in hushed tones. Cinder. It was Callahan's mark. It meant he was near. I found a deserted jungle near a siding, the campfire stones cold for days. It was eerily silent. Tents were torn, and a few scattered belongings, a worn-out boot, a bent harmonica, lay half buried in the dirt. There were signs of a struggle, and on the central water barrel, carved deep and fresh, was the cinder mark. Whoever was here had been taken. This wasn't just about clearing out vagrants. This was predatory. My father's quest for survival had intersected with something monstrous, and I was walking the same path 5 years later. My fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but the thought of turning back felt like betraying his memory. I learned to be invisible. I rode the rods beneath the cars instead of inside them, a dangerous and deafening way to travel. I moved only at night. One evening, flattened against the undercarriage of a slow-moving freight train, I saw him. The train had stopped to take on water, and a man stepped down from the caboose. He was tall and broad, dressed in a clean, dark suit that looked out of place in the grimy rail yard. He moved with an arrogant confidence, a thick club swinging idly from his hand. He scanned the shadows, his eyes missing nothing. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel the menace radiating from him. This was Blackjack Cinder Callahan. He wasn't just a man, he was an absence of hope. He strolled the length of the train, his gaze sweeping the shadows, and for a terrifying moment, his eyes seemed to lock right onto my hiding spot. I didn't breathe. After what felt like an eternity, he moved on, and the train slowly lurched forward, carrying me away from the predator, but deeper into his territory. I now knew what it was to be hunted.
The Devil's Backbone Bridge was a skeletal trestle of black steel, spanning a deep, rocky canyon. The wind howled through its beams, a constant, mournful sound. This was the place from my father's last entry. The air here felt heavy with unspoken stories. As I got closer, I saw that the bridge itself was a library of the code. Scratched into the steel supports, hidden on the underside of wooden planks, were dozens of symbols, a layered conversation stretching back years. Many were simple warnings. Unsafe bridge, railroad bull patrols here. But then I found a cluster of symbols, older and more faded than the rest, etched with a familiar hand. It was my father's work. This wasn't a simple warning. It was a narrative. He had used a combination of symbols I'd never seen before. A symbol for a train car, a diamond shape, meaning valuables inside, and the interlocking circles, handcuffs or slaves. Then a symbol for a pickaxe next to the cinder mark. It was a fragmented message, a desperate attempt to explain. Boxcar Bill's words echoed in my head. He collects 'em. My father hadn't just run into a cruel railroad bull. He had uncovered an operation. Callahan wasn't just clearing the rails. He was trafficking men. He was using the Union Pacific Line to transport a captive workforce to some unknown location, likely a mine or a quarry, where they could be worked to death far from prying eyes. My blood ran cold. This secret was the reason he disappeared. He had tried to warn others using the only language he could, the silent whispers on the steel of this bridge. Hidden under a loose railway tie, exactly where a small arrow symbol pointed, I found one last carving. It wasn't a standard hobo symbol. It was personal. It was a crude drawing of a small bird, a finch. It was the nickname he had for my mother. It was his signature, a final, heartbreaking whisper to a world that couldn't hear him. As I stood there, tracing the outline of the bird, I heard the crunch of boots on gravel behind me. Your old man was a scribbler too. Let's see if you're as much trouble as he was. The trap I had been following had finally sprung.
"Your father was a fool," Callahan said, taking a slow step forward. His men flanked me, cutting off any escape. "He had a big mouth for a man who lived on handouts. He saw things. Goods being moved off the books, men being given new employment opportunities." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "He didn't understand progress. This land is being built, boy. It needs muscle. Some men provide it willingly. Others," he shrugged, "need a little persuasion." The truth was even uglier than I had imagined. It was a modern-day slave ring, hidden under the guise of railroad security. The Dust Bowl hadn't just created poverty, it had created a supply of desperate, invisible men, perfect for Callahan's machine. "He tried to send a message to the marshals in Cheyenne, left a letter with the sympathetic station master, a kind lady," he sneered, mimicking the hobo term. "Unfortunately for your paw, the station master was also on my payroll. I caught up with him right here. He put up a good fight, more than you will." He nodded to his men. "Put him in the recruitment car. He can see where his old man's curiosity got him." They grabbed me, their hands like iron vices. I struggled, but it was useless. They were dragging me towards a siding where a single, windowless boxcar sat, isolated from the rest of the tracks. This was it, the recruitment car, the door to oblivion. As they forced me toward the car, a deafening steam whistle shrieked through the canyon. Everyone, including Callahan, flinched and looked toward the bridge. A lone figure was standing on the caboose of a freight train, his hand on the whistle cord. It was Boxcar Bill. He had followed me. He couldn't fight them, but he could create a diversion. He pointed frantically down the track, then back at Callahan, ensuring the train's engineer and brakeman saw the confrontation. Callahan's operation depended on secrecy. Witnesses were not part of the plan. "Forget the kid. Stop that train," Callahan roared, his composure finally breaking. His two men,
momentarily confused, let their grip on me loosen. It was the only chance I would get. I drove my elbow back into one man's gut and scrambled away, not back towards the bridge, but towards the steep, rocky side of the canyon, sliding and falling into the dense undergrowth, disappearing, just as my father had.
I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, the shouts of Callahan's men fading behind me. The diversion had worked. Boxcar Bill had risked everything to give me a chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. For 2 days, I lived off the land, circling back towards Cheyenne, the nearest major hub. I couldn't go to the local law. Callahan owned them. I needed someone bigger. I remembered the code, the web of silent communication that had led me here. It was time to use it, not just for survival, but for justice. Inside an empty water tank at a small unmanned station, I found my canvas. Using a piece of sharpened rock, I didn't carve a warning, I carved a call to arms. I drew the symbol for a federal marshal, a star in a circle, the symbol for danger, the cinder mark, and the symbol for the Devil's Backbone Bridge. And next to it, a new symbol, a grid of 10 squares with dots in each. Many men trapped. It was a message I prayed a law-abiding railroad man or a traveling lawman would understand. From there, I rode the rails to Cheyenne, a city teeming with life and law. I found the U.S. Marshal's office, a bastion of federal power. I was a mess, dirty, bruised, and penniless, but I had the journal. I told the deputy everything, my voice raw with exhaustion and grief. He was skeptical at first, another rail-worn kid with a tall tale. But then he saw the journal. He saw the intricate symbols, the maps, the names. He saw the truth in its worn pages. The investigation was swift and decisive. Aided by the information from my father's journal and the alert from my carved message, the marshals raided Callahan's operation. They found the slave labor quarry hidden deep in the Wyoming hills. They liberated over 50 men and arrested Callahan and his entire network, from his hired thugs to the corrupt station master. His reign of terror was over. I never saw Boxcar Bill again, but I heard whispers on the wind that an old hobo had been telling stories up and down the line, ensuring the legend of Silas and the kid who read the code would never be forgotten. I could have gone home. I could have returned to the quiet life in Kansas. But I had been changed by the rails, by the silent language that flowed along them. My father's journal wasn't just a book of symbols. It was a testament to the lives of invisible men, to their hardships and their humanity. My journey was over, but theirs was not. As the sun set over the Cheyenne rail yard, I found a clean, new fence post. I took out my knife and carved a symbol. It was a drawing of my father's finch inside a circle with a star, a new mark for the code, for all who saw it to know. It meant justice found here. A good man is remembered. The whispers on the wind would carry his story forever.